Hi friends, welcome to Growing as Grown-Ups, where we believe each of us has the opportunity to keep growing in ways that can fundamentally improve our life effectiveness, our leadership influence, and our well-being. Through interviews, stories, and practical principles, we explore how you can accelerate your growth and unlock your potential to make the difference you want to make. And now, your hosts from the Leaders Lyceum, Dr. Sarah Musgrove and Dr. Keith Eigel.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to episode 7 of the Growing as Grown-Ups podcast. Sarah, I am so excited that we have Mike Lauderdale with us today. Mike is currently the VP in charge of human resources for the services division of the Federal Express Company, FedEx. And Mike's influence is wide-ranging. He's been with the company for 35 years. He has just been noted and paid attention to as a person with great influence, so much just because of the way he is. The group that he oversees and serves right now is almost 15,000 people deep, so that's a lot of responsibility. His team is amazing to work with. Mike is amazing to work with. He is just such an overall fun person, and I know how much you enjoyed having this interview with him.
Yeah, he really is a lot of fun and his energy is contagious. And so I think not only does he have some good leadership wisdom to share with us, he's just fun to chat with.
Yeah, totally. One of my favorite things about Mike is that he and I are built just alike. So is that saying more about me or more about Mike? I don't know which one, but our personalities are very similar. I don't know if Mike's ever taken the Enneagram, but I think he's an Enneagram 7 and so am I. And what's most inspiring to me is just this, maybe someday I can be as fun as Mike. He's got such a light spirit around him and he's just so much fun. And I feel like I'm too serious a version of this, right? So, but one of the things that I think is going to be really fun as we jump into this interview in just a second is that all the way through this interview, what kind of, for me, exudes out of Mike is this amazing willingness almost to look at himself, all the great strengths about the way that he's built, and to continue to ask him, how does like an overplaying of those strengths, or how does really being me get in the way of the influence that I want to have, the difference that I want to make, just the impact that I want to have in people's lives. And he does that. He's done it kind of naturally. You'll hear a piece of the interview, even as early as high school, that it's sort of, he saw himself growing out of and through some of these challenges that were really strengths-based kinds of challenges.
Yeah, I think Mike really is an example of learning how to be yourself, but also not let yourself get in your own way. And so let's just jump in and hear my conversation with Mike, and we will be back at the end to share some of our biggest takeaways. Hello, Mike Lauderdale. Welcome to the Growing as Grown-Ups podcast. I am so excited to have you here, to have a chance to talk to you, and for our listeners to get a chance to meet you, because you are a really amazing leader that we have come to know over the past couple of years, but you are one that probably a lot of our listeners wouldn't have had a chance to interact with. And so to get to introduce them to you is really great. So Keith and I have already told our listeners a little bit about kind of who you are professionally, but I would love for you to just say hi and introduce yourself and just tell us who you are.
I'm Mike Lauderdale, as y'all heard. I am a VP of Human Resources at FedEx. I live in Memphis, Tennessee. If you can't tell from my accent, you might think I was from Boston. But I don't know. What else you want to know about me, Sarah?
Tell us, just tell the people, I got to see your drink container a second ago. Why don't you, the people that are listening, tell us what it is that I'm looking at.
You're looking at my big McDonald's cup. I actually have 2 of them. So fun fact about me, I absolutely love McDonald's. My partner and I, we go to McDonald's every day, usually twice a day. And people always ask, what's your favorite meal? Depends on the time of the day. I'll tell you the answer now. I work out really, really hard. I do CrossFit run, and I've started this year doing triathlon, so that's a new thing, but just to offset my love for McDonald's. And we have a hallway upstairs with both walls covered with pictures of us in front of every McDonald's we've ever been to around the world, every country we've ever been to, and lots of places in the U.S.
I think that is such a fun fact about you. And for the people that are listening and can't see you, you are in really good shape. And so you are definitely not the kind of person I would imagine has such a deep love for McDonald's.
I do. But you can eat healthy at McDonald's. I must go on the record. You can eat healthy at McDonald's. It's all about portion control. COVID has not been my friend during this time, not McDonald's.
There you go. This show is not brought to you by McDonald's, but McDonald's, if you want to sponsor us, get in touch with Mike.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. So we are doing kind of this opening series on our podcast. We are talking to leaders that we admire about how the challenges that they face in life have shaped them into the leaders that they are today. So we're picking people from all different walks of life, from nonprofits and from independent organizations. And I think you might be our first big corporate representative, but you're just a leader that we have come to admire and respect. And if y'all haven't figured it out already, his Southern accent is my favorite thing to listen to. And he just has such a great spirit. So it's going to be a fun episode. But with that in mind, we're just asking our leaders to tell us some stories about challenges that you've faced over the course of your life that have shaped you in meaningful ways and helped you become the leader that you are today. So when you think back over your life, what is a challenge that comes to mind that was impactful to you?
That's such a tough one, because probably I haven't always been healthy. So learning to lose, because I lost like several years ago, I lost 10 plus now, 48 to 50 pounds just to get back, because I went to McDonald's every day and love Taco Bell too. So I'm not a healthy eater. I've tried to get better about that. So I'd say one of my biggest challenges is to lose weight that just shows up overnight and maintain it. And the older you get, the harder you exercise, it doesn't work. You have to make adjustments. But relative to like leadership and life in general, I think it is humility. I really think it's owning humility. And I can give you a couple of examples, because I lived with my mother and my grandmother. I was me, my two sisters, and my mother and my grandmother. So me and four women in the house, and adore all of my family. But my mother always put this confidence in me that you could do anything. She would always kid like, she was perfect and we're all perfect, and you have the ability to do anything, be anything. You just have to put your mind to it, and almost like people like that. You see these kids on YouTube today getting accepted to college, and they're like, "Oh, I got in." And my mind was like, "Well, yeah, anywhere I apply. If I applied to Harvard, I'd get in." So that creates a confidence in you, but you have to balance it with humility. And I remember when I was, and this is this life scarring event that nobody else would probably even remembers. But my senior year in high school, I was vice president of my senior class. I'd always been on the student body and all this. Well, like, I want to be the president of the student council, his student body. And it was mine to get. I went to a small high school, so it wasn't like I'm winning it over 1,000 people. It's a very small high school, probably 75 in my graduating class. But so I get ready to, campaign and go for it. And the year before, I'd been like the treasurer or something like that. And this guy, super nerd, super geek, shaved his eyebrows like when we were in 8th grade type guy, decides he's going to run too. And I'm like, okay, I'll say his name's Sarah, just to protect the innocent. So Sarah's going to run. And I'm like, oh, well, this is easy. And we get up to do our speeches. You do speeches before election day. You kind of like our version of the debates. They were much more controlled than the debates today, undoubtedly. But he gets up to do his talk. And I mean, it's like Abraham Lincoln. He gives the most impassioned, powerful speech. I'm like, how on earth is that Sarah? Sarah, how on earth is that Sarah? It's like, and so I'm dumbfounded. So I'm one that kind of speaks from the cuff. I have my, my planned thoughts, my planned notes, but I just talk. And I get up and I'm dumbfounded. I was like, I don't even know what to say. So I do my talk. I didn't win. He won. I was like, how on earth? And there was these things that related, like if you're the president of student council, you hosted certain events and stuff. So it's like that moment in life didn't allow me to do other things I just had, quote, expected to do through about the rest of my senior year. So fast forward to, I'm working at FedEx, interested in, it wasn't like, I'm not one of those people that's like, I want to be the CEO of, FedEx, I'm Mr. Smith's replacement. It's like, no, it's like, I'm one that is kind of very Boy Scouty of me. I like to be prepared and make sure I'm ready for when opportunities present themselves. And then I just, walk through the door. So I had been kind of like thinking about leadership. I'd been in leadership roles. It's like, well, I think I want to go into management, but I don't want to be any manager. So a job comes up in the area that I worked in, and another one in a sister department that I would have liked as well came open. So I was like, I'm going to apply for both of them. It'll be a good experience for the one, but I really want this other one. So I interviewed for both jobs. Certain I did great on both of them. I was just like, oh, I think I really, really nailed that. And I get a call on Friday from the one that I was okay if I got, but I didn't really want to. And it was late in the day on Friday. So, and this is, before texting or cell phones or anything. So it's on my desk, big clunky desk phone. Didn't have a rotary dial though. It did have.
You're not that old.
Yeah, not that old. But so I didn't call him back. So I'll call him Monday just in case I hear from the other person. Well, on Monday morning, I hear from the other person. Hey, Mike, you did a great job and everything, but we're going to offer the job to Betty. Oh, okay. Well, I call the other person back. Well, I got that one. Call them. Mike, you did a great job, but we're going to offer the job to Johnny. Oh. And then you backtrack, and it's like, it's more than just your answers. And I always give this feedback to people when they interview with me or other people, is like I said, there's this fine line between confidence and arrogance, and you don't want to cross it. You can be confident. And so through my, just through my life, and this applies to work and home and everything, it's like, you want to be confident enough, but you don't want to be overly confident. One, probably to be disappointed, but you also don't want to be overly confident because you may miss the obvious. Like, what were the things you didn't plan for? What were the, what were the Sarahs that come out of the, the dark horses that come in and take that opportunity. So I think that's probably my biggest learning, is learning to how to channel my confidence into a confident humility.
I love it. And I love that you have two stories that kind of reinforce the same lesson, but they come from different ages and stages of life.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you can put yourself back in the mind of high school Mike and
that's easy.
Career Mike, what did that loss mean to you at the time?
Oh, both times. And I'm not a depressed guy. I'm one of those people, if you look at the change curve and you go through the stages of depression, I just kind of speed through. We always talk, skate as fast as you can. I just go through the curve really quickly and like, let's get on, life's too short. Let's get on with it. But both of those examples, I mean, I went into I think because the high school one was probably the first time I maybe had faced. I'm sure there were other times. Like, I knew if I wasn't great at baseball. So if I didn't hit a ball, I'm not depressed because I'm not really good at baseball. But that one, I was like, this is mine. I had been working for it. I think the only thing that helped me was at that time, because I was really like depressed, but I didn't want to show it. I didn't want people, so I internalized it. I didn't want to show that I was depressed, especially in high school. You don't want to show vulnerability and weakness. A friend of mine, soon after that, she had won like junior miss. So it's like a Miss America in high school, but junior miss. She had won our grade every year from 9th grade all the way up. And our senior year, this, 6 foot tall person that has been in high school with us all the year, beautiful girl, and who played the piano, she decides she's going to go for junior miss that year. And she looks like, like a Miss America, and she had a real talent and everything like that. It wasn't like poem reading or something, but the poem reading's good. But she gets up and she wins. And so this friend of mine, who's one of my best friends, we were like, almost could commiserate and say, okay, what got us here? And what drove it. And then when I go fast forward to that first manager's job I applied for, deep depression. I mean, I was like, for, I would say a week plus, I was like, just didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to go into my you go through, you got the, denial, anger, bargaining, depression. It was like, I just, fast forward, let's say depressed. Let me just like, poor pitiful me. And then finally then I just started fact checking. Why didn't you get the job? I mean, I always, ask for interview feedback, whether I get the job or not. How well did I do? But it's so much more than the interview. It was the attitude walking into the interview and the way in which you handled leading up to that opportunity and then after that opportunity. And hopefully I've built it into so much coaching I do for other people, because you do interview some people that it's like, Sarah, you were really great. I mean, you were really great, but God, you love yourself. I mean, you are like, you just crossed that line into just total arrogance. You need to ratchet it back because it's inhibiting you from the growth you really need.
So I think that's so insightful. And I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit more, either from your personal experience, which would be great, but also from what you've seen in other people, of what is it about arrogance that gets in the way of somebody growing and taking these opportunities and becoming more, we've talked about it, and you've heard our you've heard our lessons enough that the kind of growing into the bigger me, right, and not being held in place by something else. Like, how is it that arrogance and that attitude of it's mine to lose, how did that get in your way?
It was that you didn't open up yourself to what's possible. Don't want to give this away. Hope everybody's seen the movie. What was the movie? Oh Lord, now I've even forgotten the name of it. But the one with Bruce Willis and Haley Joel Osment.
Sixth Sense?
The Sixth Sense. Yeah, it was like at the end of the movie, don't want to give it away to everybody, but at the end of the movie, you have a aha that makes you rethink the entire movie. And I can't remember what Haley's name was in the movie, but had his eyes been opened in the beginning, what would that have told him as he was going the experience? And I think arrogance is the same way, or it's mine to lose, or overconfidence is you don't open up your eyes, meaning your mind, your body, to see the obvious clues that are out there. I think that's the biggest one. I see it or saw it with myself, and I see it in so many other people. It's like, I love your confidence. Your confidence is great, but what are you missing by being so confident? So
let me ask you this. You just changed roles.
Yes. Talk about a change.
A month ago, 2 months ago?
About 6 or 8 weeks ago. Yeah.
So I'm assuming in that process, you had to go through some job interviews. So can you tell me?
Oh, actually, no, it was actually an assignment. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was I got a phone call and asked if I was willing to serve, and.
Yes, sir. Here I go.
Yeah. So I said, here I go. But it was a dramatic change. So I'm ready for that. I kept saying, I serve at the pleasure of the company, but if you'd called me to tell me I want you to be like the CFO or the chief security officer or something, I might have said, yeah, that's not in my wheelhouse. But so this one I felt was.
So does this new change, and this may or may not lead into the next big question, but is this fall in the category of things that you're confident in, or things that you are not sure that aren't exactly things?
Honestly, both. Some of it I'm really confident because I have now I'll have leadership development and things that I'm very passionate about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, things like that. So I'm very passionate about that. So from that aspect, I'm confident in my vision and strategy. execution, I'm probably a little bit more humble about how do we do it all? How do we get it all done? But other areas that like aren't my strong suit, compensation or workforce analytics, things like that. But I know I've got such a great team. The one thing I think I do well as a leader is surround myself with people, and I'm a big get to know the people on my team. So the first couple of weeks on the job, I'm like, okay, I want to meet with everybody. I want to meet with every team member. Tell me what type of behavioral style you are. What do you do? What are you responsible for? So I know who I'm depending on, because they're going to the ones to help us all be successful.
And it seems like that approach really helps with the humility aspect, right? Of recognizing that the people around you are gifted and skilled in things that you aren't going to be able to do, and learning to rely on them and not being the kind of leader that thinks I have all the right answers.
Oh, absolutely. I think leaders that think they have all the right answers have no answers sometimes, because they think they have all the right answers. Again, setting a good strategy and a vision helps empower the team just as much as just literally empowering the team, because you have to hold yourself accountable and then hold your team accountable, but they're the ones that are going to, deliver, especially the higher in the organization you go from the roles you have, you're dependent. I mean, Mr. Smith is dependent on every single courier every day, every team member sorting packages in the hub. He's dependent on all these people to deliver on the great service that's FedEx. He knows he can't do it.
So when you think about the journey that's ahead of you in this new role and all the things that you need to figure out and accomplish in leading a new group of people, what do you think is going to be the biggest obstacle that you face personally, not from the organization or from forces outside, right? You spend enough time talking with us that looking inside at our own challenges and the ways that we hold ourselves in place is where we have the opportunity to really grow and become more mature and more grounded and, ultimately these kind of level 5 leaders. So what is it that you have noticed that you're kind of bumping it up against these days that you think might be your next big challenge?
I would say 3 things. One is time management. It's because I had my last role, I'd been in that for 6 years. I managed my time, my schedule, I was able to form and transform the organization to the one that it is today, which I'm thrilled about. And it is my heart, that organization. But it was like, I learned how to manage my time really well. And here, coming into this job, because there's so much, I call it context. People have been asking, what's the toughest part of your new job? Context switching. It's like you're talking about compensation today, diversity, equity, and inclusion tomorrow. Then you're talking about workforce strategy, and then you're talking about implementation, new HR technology. So it's so much context switching and so many things on your schedule that you can't manage. So I say first thing for me is personal time management. How do I manage the time and be there for everything I need to be, but balance it as well? Second thing probably for me is realizing I can't do everything. It was a little different because I was offered this opportunity, so I hadn't been building a strategy for it. We're down a path on a couple new programs with CT and our strategy in my prior organization, and all of a sudden this opportunity, get a call today and start tomorrow type of thing. And so it was like, oh, well, I have great ideas. I have a lot of ideas, but now what's your overarching strategy? How are you going to connect everything together to one direction for where you want to go? And then I think the third challenge for me in that space is doing it, knowing breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. We talk a lot about the one thing here, and what's the one thing that's going to lead to the next thing. Is like, okay, what is realistic for me to accomplish in FY21 and then FY22, and know that I can't have it all overnight. And that's it. The third one's probably an easier skill for me because I know it is just that typically if I've gone into a new job or I'm in an existing job for a while and I have a new strategy, the strategy drives the the timing in my head. And this time I'm like, well, I want it all now. So how can I balance those two together?
So of those three that you mentioned, which one do you think seems the most daunting?
The time management, shockingly, at the moment, the time management, and I think it's somewhat related to the stay-at-home orders and the pandemic pieces, because everybody's available. People aren't rushing out to like yesterday. No fault of anybody's, time management on my part. I was going to go work out at 5:30. I had a call that went up, supposed to go up to 4:30. It went up to closer to 5, and then I had 2 follow-up calls to do for that. And it's like, I'm not going to make it there by 5:30. Let's go eat Mexican tonight. Let's go the other direction. But I think it's me learning to cut off. We talk a lot at work now about work-life flow or being in blur's day, where it's like, I don't know what today is. It's just blur's day. So I think me managing time and actually helping the people that I work with manage time, that's probably going to be the toughest one, just because of the environment we're in right now.
So, we talk about how the things that bother us point to things that we value, right? So the frustration you feel of having to switch back and forth and not be able to, maybe you said, be everything for the people that you need, and having to do things remotely and having this availability, all that stuff. What does that signify, if you can think about it? Like, what are those values that lie behind it that seem like you're not getting to fully express them in the way that you wish you could?
I would think it's the would you call it the desire to please, or the desire to be available? It's one thing. I mean, I realize, we've got a strategy. There's so many things I want to achieve. I can frame them up well, and then manage in the everyday. But it's almost like you don't want to disappoint. I feel like I've got a little extra, not pressure, but expectation on myself with this new role, because it was an opportunity offered to me, and I want to make sure that I'm very successful in it. So I want to know enough. But I also know that fast forward 6 months and I'll find my cadence, I'll find my rhythm. It's getting back to training for the marathon, which I really liked that. Still don't love running. It's a skill and I can do it, but don't love it. Love CrossFit, but I don't love running, but it's a skill. And what I think it's helped me, and actually it helped me with CrossFit and it's helped me with life, is treating things like a marathon, because you're going to go 26 miles. You can't sprint out at the front. I still tend to sometimes, but because sometimes my pace on the first mile will be my pace, but is having that discipline. I get one of my coaches or old coaches at CrossFit always kidded me about sandbagging, because we would have, a long workout that's like, 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And he's like, I'd always have this extra energy at the end. You're just sandbagging. It's like, no, I'm maintaining so I can complete, because I don't want to just stop. I don't want to stop at mile 18. I don't want to stop at, 15 out of a 20-minute workout. So I want to be able to pace it. And I think that I've learned to apply that discipline to work as well. I know all the things I want to do, but I know I've got to pace them out. And right now I'm still learning to run right now. So I'm sprinting on a lot of things when I got to realize, okay, I'm going to have to learn to pace those down so that I can actually finish the full marathon.
Sounds so easy, and yet it's really hard to tease apart those voices, right? Of what,
the internal voice that's over here saying, no, go faster, or you can't do it. You've always done it this way. It's going to work again. It's like, it may not work again.
Yeah, I love it. So good. So if you think forward, right, let's put ourselves this time next year. Mm-hmm. What story do you want told of Mike Lauderdale as he engaged in the first year of this new position, or survived 2020 and all the things that it brings? Like, what do you want to be more true of you next year than it is today?
I think the one thing that was very appealing about this job, and I had conversations with, people as I was saying yes, I can't say really before I said yes, as I was saying yes, was that I think I could have a bigger influence than I was having in my current role. And again, we were doing great work for our teams, for our customers and everything in my prior role. But I'm very passionate because I've said it a couple of times about one of my roles is diversity, equity, inclusion. And I turn on the TV and it just drives me nuts thinking, is this 1960? I mean, I'm like, I just watched the news. I'm like, and I think Memphis has done a really good job with social unrest right now. And because we took an approach between the spiritual, religious leaders, the politicians, the chamber, and protesters to say we're going to listen, learn, and lead. That was the approach that the chamber took, and I thought it was great. Is they would go, we're going to bring the clergy together and the politicians together, and y'all are going to listen to the protesters, listen to their voices, then repeat back what you heard, what you learned, so that we can all collectively learn and then lead to solutions together. And I think Memphis has done a great job of that. And I kind of want that same approach for FedEx. I want to make sure that from our leaderships of tomorrow, that we reflect the communities we're in, the customers we serve, the suppliers we use, that we are creating that leaders of tomorrow, because I want to feel like a year from now that I've set our organization, services and corporate, on a direction to help us be here for the next 43, 45 years. Because I've been here 35 years and I'm obviously don't have 30, I have more than 35 years of life ahead of me, but I won't be at FedEx for another 35 years, but I'd like to know that we've set the direction, and it really starts with the frontline employees. So all the way from our college connections, our entry-level program, to developing our individual contributors, to the frontline leaders, and how do you build that throughout so that we have the leaders of tomorrow? Because we have a very tenured organization, and we have new people coming in, and people coming in today, you tell them you've been somewhere 35 years, you've been 35 years, when they haven't been alive that long, but they're like, oh, I just can't imagine that. Well, I think I do want to help you imagine that. So what does that look like? So I think a year from now, I would feel satisfaction if I really felt like we've really listened, learned, and led as an organization to get us the true diverse leaders of tomorrow that we need to make us successful.
So what does that look like for you at an executive level, right? You're not the one down with the frontline employees. So what will you personally be able to do and push yourself to do to make that happen?
I honestly, I think that when I said listen, learn, lead is listen. I feel like much of my job is inspiration, as it is, setting a strategy and directing and leading the organization. But I think it's also inspiring everyone to follow and go down that path. And I feel like for me, I have to personally balance inspiration with accountability and expectations. So it's like, how do you, I can inspire you all day, rah, but you don't get anything done. So it's balancing the two. So making sure I'm holding me accountable, the team accountable to the expectations we have, at the same time inspiring them to want to achieve.
Yeah. And I have insight into your personality type. And so I know some things about you. And when we do our series on personality, we'll probably reference back to you, but you are Keith.
In code name.
You are the same personality as Keith, but even more so. And so I know, like, inspiration just runs through your blood. Like, that is your true gifting and wiring and just what comes naturally to you. So I see that being a really great way for you to have an impact on your job, especially with some of these diversity and inclusion initiatives and things like that do require people to need to feel
differently, right?
Right.
To recognize you need to change. But then some of the execution stuff is the stuff that gets a little harder, right? Because living in the ideals being paired with the
make it actually happen.
Get it done stuff is hard. And so
the get it done component of it.
Yeah. So I see that, but I think you have figured out a way with your discipline, right? I think the running analogy that you've given and just what you've learned in your life is that discipline is what really helps you overcome kind of your natural tendencies to just live in the ideals and the inspiration and say, no, we've got to get some done, and we're going to discipline, and we're going to pace, and we're going to set goals. So
right, it's so much easier. You remember the little small bouncy ball that you would get? Yeah, I think you still buy them out of the little candy
vending
machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you bounce them, and then they just go off the wall. That's my natural desire. I just want to bounce off the wall and have a good time. Bounce me again. But then you have to learn, okay, how do you control the bounce to actually say, okay, I'm going to hit the ball, and I want it to hit that spot on the wall, and you keep doing it over and over until you can. But know that you still have the ability to bounce all over the wall, but you're training yourself to bounce in one direction.
Yeah, and knowing that you can have a bigger influence, like you said, when you are able to control that strategically and intentionally.
Right. I think intentionally, that's a good word, intentionally, yeah.
So as you think about kind of what you've learned over your life and your career, and you now have kind of this access to up and coming leaders, right? A lot of our podcast listeners are younger in their careers, earlier in their kind of management and leadership influence. What advice would you give to people who are earlier on the journey than you?
First off, like my mother, have the confidence, believe in yourself, that belief that don't sell yourself short, believe you can do anything. Doesn't mean you have to want to do anything, but have the belief that you can do anything, and then choose the things you want to go after. The second is, and this is a life learning, is follow your gut. I mean, I remember I first became a manager. I was a brand new manager, and I had something happen with some employees that I was like, to me, the common thing would be to say, hey, Sarah, you shouldn't have done that. But my two peers had both been my managers at one time, and they're like, oh, and this is back in the 90s when you did formal memos and stuff. Oh, you need to give Sarah a written memo, counseling memo to say that. So I'm like, oh, that seems really harsh. I just think I should just tell her she shouldn't have done that. But no, so I followed their advice. My gut's saying one thing, I followed their advice. And I know, especially now being in HR, there are things that are black and white, but there's a lot of gray in life. And so I gave them a piece of paper that said the same exact thing I would have said verbally, but having it on paper, I think tarnished their initial, and it's my first manager job, first work group, their view of me, and I just felt uncomfortable. They probably never thought about it again. It's been, 25, 30 years later, they probably never thought about it again. But to me, to this day, it bothers me because I didn't follow my gut. So I think for new leaders, I would say have the confidence, know you can do anything. And there are times when the world's telling you one thing, but your gut tells you something else. Listen to your gut. Your gut's probably right.
Where do you think the balance is, especially for younger leaders, of listening to their gut and seeking wise counsel?
I think you should always seek wise counsel. I think you should always ask and get input. And if your gut's telling you something, it's kind of like getting a second opinion from your doctor. If your gut's telling you something, go to somebody totally removed from that, which is what I should have done. Because I asked my two peers who used to be my bosses, so obviously they know. And my best move would have gone to go to some other trusted leader that I know whose style I valued, and ask, well, what would you do in this situation, just to validate, maybe my gut is right.
Yeah, that's good.
I think we're real bad about getting our coaching and advice from our verticals. And I really think you need to get coaching and advice from people outside of your discipline and outside of your vertical, because they're going to have a totally different perspective, and they're not going to necessarily be shaped by what you do, but who you are.
I like that. And we talk about it not in the corporate hierarchy kind of like that, but more in terms of diversity of perspective. And I think getting input from people outside of your kind of smaller
Well, like the peer
experience.
mentoring groups, I mean, I love those because you were peers, but you're getting advice from people that are complementary styles,
Mm-hmm.
not the same as you.
Yeah, exactly. So then one last question, Mike, as we wrap up with everything that's going on in the world and all the difficulties, we love to end with a positive question. And that is, what is going on in life right now that you're excited about?
I'm excited about the holidays. But
Yes.
it's weird. I'm excited about. We talked about this is a not the answer you're expecting. It's like, should we get the Christmas tree out now and just start decorating now? Because we're all at home. We might as well enjoy it. We're not going to have some big holiday party that we're getting ready for. So we might as well have an extended celebration season, especially with daylight savings time coming in. It's going to be dark at 5 o'clock. Well, wouldn't some Christmas lights really brighten that up? So, I think I'm excited about our strategies for getting us through the rest of this remaining time, however long that time is. The other thing I'm excited about as far as the company is I love some of the ways in which COVID has brought, 2025, 2030 into today from an e-commerce perspective and changing the way in which we shop, we interact. I think it's, for all the bad, I think has opened up a lot of good, just like us doing this podcast type thing. I'm looking at you, which is great, because typically if you did a podcast, and we were doing Joe Rogan style, but if we were, a lot of people would just do it on the phone. I said, I think there's more with that, looking at people interacting. So I like that that's opened up opportunities for people too. So I'm excited. I'm excited about a lot of things. I think I want to see people in society get a little happier. Just find the happy.
Man, I support that. I think if we all had somebody like you around us, there'd be more of that. You have just one of the best spirits. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time and sharing your stories and just everything you've learned over your life and your approach to leadership. I think it's just such a fun and beautiful way. The way you care about your people is great. And so I wish you all the best in your new opportunity. And I hope we get to talk again soon.
Thank you. We definitely will.
Sarah, what a fun interview. And I have to tell you, great job keeping that thing going and kind of rallying him in a little bit. One of the things you can't really experience until you've been with Mike for some period of time is just how doggone likable he is and how winsome he is and how funny he is. I mean, you got little bits and pieces and tastes of the interview all through that. But he's got such a notable personality. And so when I think back to some of these things in the interview that really stood out to me, I think, obviously when we kicked off the early story from sort of his high school years and how that bled into the interview situation and his incredible awareness of how just arrogance and confidence and while arrogance isn't seen, I think, generally as like an asset, confidence is an asset, right? And there's a fine line between those two places. And I just want to say, even though Mike used the word arrogance, I've never seen him cross that line. I mean, he always comes across on the confident side of that line. But I really loved, he said, you have to recognize where that confidence, that arrogance and attitude has inhibited you from the growth that you really need. It's keeping you from maybe what's possible. And you need to ask yourself, what are you missing by being so confident? And what's interesting is these things that so often, and each of us has these, we have these strengths that we bring to the table that have really served us well in the past. Usually those things are in our wheelhouse, right? Usually they're things that like we've been rewarded for, we've been promoted for, people have given us accolades for them and all this kind of stuff. And one of the big takeaways for me in terms of what can I be learning new about me by listening to Mike's interview is that there is such value in asking yourself the question, how do I open my eyes and my mind to what I'm missing by being the way that I am, right? And for that to just be a constant question in the middle of that. So I don't know what your reaction was to that, but I just love that whole opening segment, the whole opening 15 or 20 minutes of the interview.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think I said it in the interview too, like he has done such a good job of balancing that. And something that struck me just now hearing you say it is, it wasn't what am I missing by being so arrogant, right? Confident is a good thing. But even then, what am I missing by being so confident? And I think back to Carl's interview on our last podcast, right? Where he talked about this idea of how do I go in and listen with curiosity and figure out what I might be missing by listening to somebody else's perspective. And I think even the good things like confidence, we're not getting rid of them, but we're just holding them in check to say, what might I be missing by doing that? And that leads into what was one of my favorite parts of the interview was when I asked him what was the story he wanted to be told of how he leads in this new season of life. And he pulled in that phrase, I think from the Chamber of Commerce maybe, or but the listen, learn, and lead. And again, going back to what we talked about last time of we just need to learn to listen to other people. And as he's trying to lead this new branch of the organization, like not coming in and thinking he has all the right answers, because as he said, leaders who think they have all the right answers have no answers. But to say, I just want to listen to people. I want to learn from what they have to share, what I can learn from them, which requires this openness and the humility. And then once I've listened and learned, then I can lead. And I just think that's so beautiful and something that I think everybody just could use a little bit more of that in our lives, of learning to listen more and try to learn instead of always just trying to lead in the way that we think is right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Growing as Grown-Ups podcast, right? I mean, the whole idea behind this is that we keep figuring out ways to push ourselves to keep growing. And it is really hard to keep growing if you're not willing to listen to others, listen to the circumstances, listen to your own inner voice, listen to the tension, right? I mean, it's just such a beautiful concept that gets played out and can be leveraged in so many different ways. I think one of the big things for folks to kind of think through, and if anyone's gone in and downloaded the Growth Gap tool, and you can go to the growinggrownups.com website to go get that, to jump into some of the resources that we have for our listeners to explore. One of the things that you discover by going in that is you do have this way you're built. You have a way that you're built. I have a way that I'm built. Everyone who's listening, we've got this stuff that we bring to the table, right? And it's who we are. And a lot of it's personality, some of it's upbringing, some of it's experiences that we've had. And all of those things wind up serving us so well early in our lives, but figuring out how can I bump up against the stuff that just plays as like background music in my life, that's been so much a part of who I am that I almost don't know it's playing until it gets quiet enough for me to go, oh yeah, that is playing right now, right? And one of the things that again, that Mike said that was so good is that I need to recognize that I need to manage my time differently, that I can't do everything, that I can't have it all overnight. And all of that kind of energy, this sort of bouncing from thing to thing, the getting on it now, the getting sucked into it, all background music for Mike and people and for me. That's how I can say it so confidently about him, is it's kind of the way that we're built. And so, I think my encouragement to people as we kind of shut down this episode of the podcast is that don't just listen to these things, folks. Go in and explore and learn about you. Use the Growth Gap tool as a way to listen to you so that you can learn new and lead. And I love it that you pointed that out. So thanks so much for doing that.
Yeah. And just a second, I want our listeners to go and do some of this work themselves. And I think the last thing from Mike's podcast, which might be a good way to wrap this up, is just his wish that we all just find the happy. And life is tough. This year is tough. Let's just find some happy. And I hope, if nothing else, Mike's interview brought you some happy.
Yeah, totally good. Thanks so much. Good to be with you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Growing as Grown-Ups. Take a second and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes, and tell your friends. You'll find all of the goods related to this episode, including the transcript, videos, links, and other ways we can help you keep growing as a grown-up on our website, growinggrownups.com. Growth isn't easy, but it's completely within your reach. Until next time, journey well, friends.